Poland is blocking the copyright directive in Europe, ACTA2. Recent work is underway to agree on the final version of the EU copyright directive in the digital single market, referred to by its opponents as ACTA2. Today, social protests against internet censorship will also take place across Europe as a result of surprising news from Brussels about the new law. During the negotiations, Poland created the so-called blocking minority in the EU Council, which means that the final arrangements scheduled for Monday, which were to be concluded with a March vote, will not take place. Therefore, it seems unlikely that the legislative process will be completed in this parliamentary term. The elections are already in May. This does not mean, however, the complete termination of this topic and attempts to control statements on the internet. Now probably, a new version of the copyright directive will be created, which will not contain controversial entries, such as attacks on links or the obligation of publishers of websites to censor statements of internet users. The elections to the European Parliament already in May, so it would be worth striking out on the page and choose those politicians who will then fight for freedom of speech, especially that you can be sure that in a few months the subject will be revived as ACTA3, and so to the end. Despite the current situation, participation in the protests planned today is a particularly good idea. Politicians must see the power of a society dissatisfied with plans to deprive him of freedom of expression and use of the internet. The first ACTA protests in 2012 frightened the political class. Several years passed and the idea of censorship returned. Again, a proper manifestation is needed, because this battle may have been won, but the war for censorship of the internet continues. The previous arrangements were not very positive and concessions regarding the most controversial entries were minimal. Temporary blocking of ACTA2 in the EU Council is undoubtedly the success of activists fighting for freedom of speech on the internet, gathered under the #StopACTA2 initiative. Although the issue of the decision regarding the censorship of the European internet was postponed, on January 22 the new rules are introduced by Google. Undoubtedly, it was prepared in connection with the expected by this corporation, the adoption of this EU directive. Will it still be used as restrictively as anticipated in Article 13 of the infamous directive? For a time, this will only depend on Google's decision, not the law requirement.